Hello and welcome to Burlington Progressive Party TV. My name is Carter Neubieser. I'm an activist and organizer with the Progressive Party here in Burlington and statewide. The Progressive Party was first founded after the coalition helped elect Bernie Sanders to be mayor of Burlington. And since then, we've actually built the most successful third party in the nation, doing all of that without a dime of corporate campaign cash. And today, we're really focused on town meeting day results. What went right for the party, what we can work on, and maybe looking at some of these races and what the legislative priorities are going to be moving forward. So I'm actually joined today with the executive director of the Progressive Party, Josh Wronski, who has been doing some amazing work and has helped kind of propel the Progressive Party to victory in town meeting day this time around. So yeah, thanks for being here, Josh.
Thanks for having me on, Carter.
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
Excited to be here.
Absolutely. So I think let's get right into it then.
Yeah.
We have had some interesting races, I think really good results for the party overall, and I think at the end of the day, good results for the issues that I think we all care about as a community. So one of the things I first wanted to turn to is school board, actually, because a good friend of mine, and I think a good friend of a lot of folks who are involved with the Progressive Party, Aden Haji in Ward 8, won election, and he was the first new American ever, I think, in the city's history to be elected to the school board. So I wondered if you could take some time to talk about that race and kind of what that means for the school board, what that means for the party, and what it means for the community.
Yeah, I think that's a huge victory for everyone in Burlington, really. Aden is a really exciting kind of person. He has a lot of good ideas for the school board, and I think also what he represents for, just the community in general is really, really big. I just found out today that he was actually the first new American elected to the school board, and that's really exciting, especially in a situation where you have so many new Americans coming up through the Burlington school system. Aden was a high school student, went through Burlington High School, and I think he's seen a lot of things that he'd like to see changed or maybe addressed, and that's why he ran. And he was able to unseat an incumbent in that ward, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, and I think too it's even more amazing that he won by a pretty significant margin, frankly. I think it was around 20 percentage points, and that was really exciting to see. And I see we have some calls coming in, so we will get to those. But I do briefly want to make sure that I also turn to some other races as well, because Aden was really exciting. I worked personally to make sure to help him out because I thought he was such a great candidate. I did want to turn as well to Ward 1, where we had some interesting results.
Yeah.
Certainly we had someone who was a longtime incumbent who had some really good service to the city, but we did see Zariah win in a three-way race for Ward 1 with 54% of the vote.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. I just wondered your thoughts on that race as well.
Yeah, no, that was a huge win for us. I have a lot of respect for Sharon Busher, who was the incumbent. We had endorsed her for many elections previously. This time, I think Ward 1 residents were ready for a change. We had a competitive caucus late last year, and Zariah won that caucus by a pretty substantial margin, and the kind of campaign she put together, she knocked every door twice with a big volunteer network. She focused on issues of climate and housing justice, and she really went out there and did the kind of grassroots organizing work, and she was able to win a big victory. So yeah, that's incredibly exciting.
Yeah, and then one of our incumbents as well over in Ward 2, Max Tracy, won re-election. I think the votes came out to be 2-1 in favor of Max, which was interesting. I know that it's something we talked about on Burlington Progs before, where we had a ton of money being poured in and raised against Max in particular, but against pretty much in every ward for city council this time, and there was a lot of money spent against him. So can you kind of talk about, I think, what that means for the party, but more so what that means for like the value of grassroots organizing as well?
Absolutely. Well, I think it's pretty clear that the Old North End is a progressive district, and Ward 2 especially is a progressive ward. Max won it was nearly 70% of the vote.
Yeah.
And this is in a situation, we'll see what the final campaign finance numbers are at the end of this race, but he won by going out and knocking doors. His opponent did. I personally live in Ward 2, and I think I had 3 direct mailers from his opponent, in addition to like fundraising and phone calls and text messages. So it really felt like a very heavy kind of direct mail campaign versus Max Tracy's campaign of going out and talking to residents, and that was really exciting. And I think part of the reason he won is because people support the vision that Max represents for both Ward 2 and for the city at large. And it really, it was very clear that what Max has represented on the city council is what Ward 2 wants to be represented by. And just a reminder, this is one of the highest turnout town meeting days in Burlington history. So
yeah,
that's exciting as well.
Yeah, that is really incredible. And then Ward 3, and we'll hopefully see if we have some callers coming in. We will turn to that in a minute, but I also just wanted to touch really quickly on Ward 3. We had an unopposed race there. Brian Pine won. What do you think his reelection will mean for the council, and kind of what he brings to the table in terms of experience?
Yeah, no, I think we're really happy to have him back. Brian's someone he was a former housing director. He has a ton of experience and that he brings to the table. And I think it's kind of a testament to how much people support him in Ward 3 and how much people appreciate his service, that no one ran against him, and he was unopposed in that ward. And I think he's going to do some great things on the city council.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I talked to Brian, I think the last time I was on here, and it was really interesting to kind of talk with him about his vision, after winning re-election, but also really talking about the history of the city and kind of how he got involved. So Ward 5 would be next in our list, I guess. And that was a really interesting race to see the results on, because in some ways, it's, for the last few decades, has been a pretty strong ward for the Democratic Party. And I think Nate, who ran there, actually had one of the best results for a progressive in a few decades.
Absolutely. And Ward 5, we have had elected progressives in Ward 5 before, but not in a very long time. And this is definitely the best we've done in at least the past 10 years, and probably longer.
Yeah.
We've run candidates against the incumbent Chip Mason the past 2 cycles, and 2 cycles ago the candidate got 39%, and then Jesse Warren, who ran 2 years ago, got about 43%, and then now Nate received almost 46% of the vote and 1,000 total votes. And I think that's a really exciting. This is a ward that really is should be the heart of the Democratic base in Burlington, and the fact that we're doing so well means really good things. And I think we will win that seat eventually. So very exciting.
Yeah, it is really exciting. It was great to see too just the kind of campaign that Nate ran, because it was really focused on listening to folks, getting feedback from folks, focused on building community, which I think is really needed in across the city, but in Ward 5 as well, for sure. So I was really proud. Nate is a friend of mine as well, and really just amazed at the campaign he ran there. So then looking over at Ward 7, Ali also ran unopposed. He has been really a strong voice on the council for a number of issues. Similar to Brian, though, I think, what does Ali's re-election mean for the party over there?
Yeah, it's huge. And again, this is the first chance he's had to run unopposed as well.
Yeah.
So that, again, is a testament to how much support he has in the community, that no one kind of came up to decide to run against him. So that's really exciting, and I think Ali's going to, again, do great things on the city council, and he has a really strong vision, and we look forward to working with him.
Yeah. And then over to Ward 8 to kind of go over the results of the election. This really shocked a lot of folks. I think within the Progressive Party, there was a sense that it was going to be close, but that Jane would win. It was interesting to see how many folks were just taken aback by not only Jane Stromberg winning the Ward 8 City Council race, but winning by a really decisive margin.
Yeah.
Could you talk about what that means? And I also think kind of, similar to Auden, it is a bit of history as well, because Jane will actually be the youngest woman ever elected to the City Council, and I believe the first, female City Councilor from Ward 8 ever.
No, that's really exciting. She may be the youngest too. Yeah, we have to kind of go back a long time in history.
Yeah.
Definitely to like the probably late 80s, maybe early 90s to find someone who is a 22-year-old recent college grad who got elected to city council. And it makes sense because this is it's a very student heavy ward. And I think what Jane was able to do is really connect with the residents of Ward 8 on a deep level, and her grassroots organizing and message of climate justice and holding UVM accountable and housing rights was really what carried her over the top. And it's also just a really big thing for our city. Her opponent was the architect of the Downtown Improvement District, which went down last year and was really kind of an architect of the privatization effort. So the fact that we are able to kind of flip that seat is really a pretty big deal for us.
Yeah, and it was interesting too because it is a student-heavy ward, but at the same time, there are a lot of folks who have been there for many years who are homeowners in the district, and just from personal experience going out and knocking doors for Jane in Ward 8, I connected with a number of folks who had been there for years, even decades, who ended up being part of what Jane was putting together as a coalition. So it was really interesting to see you had all this enthusiasm from young folks, but you also had folks who were there for a long time who supported her enthusiastically. So she really put together that kind of multi-generational campaign, which was interesting.
Absolutely, and also we have to give big credit to you, Carter, for running 2 years ago. And it's often for all of our candidates, it often takes a couple cycles, and sometimes the person who runs and loses isn't always the person who runs and wins the next time, but they definitely always kind of create the infrastructure and the organizing effort and momentum to enable that to happen. So I think you're also a big part of that. Absolutely.
Well, now I'm blushing, Josh. But, I just wanted to do a quick rundown and kind of as a reminder to folks at home, this is a call-in show. You can call in at 802-862-3966, and I will do my best, as always, to work the phones and answer any questions folks may have. I think I did want to spend some time turning to a few things. I think one, what does this mean for the city? And in particular, I think, something that was interesting that I think you had said after we had got town meeting results in something that was it was an interesting dynamic, I guess. We had really the mayor's agenda being pushed through relentlessly the past few years. And consistently, I think, in the course of 2 election cycles, we've seen folks who are not necessarily going along and rubber stamping the mayor's agenda win by pretty decisive margins. Do you think this was a referendum on the mayor's administration and his tenure so far?
I do. I absolutely think it was a referendum on that. I think, you look at the fact that it was such a high turnout election. You look at how well we did in the South End. You look at how well we did in Ward 2 and how well we did in Ward 1 and 8. And I think that clearly, had some impact. Now, it's also a testament to the quality of our candidates. I think Zerai Hightower is an incredibly strong candidate. Jane Stromberg, incredibly strong candidate. Max has been a really good city councilor for Ward 2, and Nate ran one of the strongest campaigns we've ever run in the South End. So I think all of those factors came into play, but I think absolutely kind of the general dissatisfaction had an impact.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I do want to talk about the issues that, you had just mentioned this kind of being a referendum on the mayor's agenda and also how strong our candidates were and how they could communicate with folks. What have you heard so far as the party director as some of the priorities that we could be seeing from a progressive city council?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of, all of our candidates ran on a platform that included housing and climate justice. So some of the things I've heard the councilor-elects talk about, district energy at the McNeil generating station. I think that district heating, that's a huge thing. Talking about fare free busing to expand public transit and remove fares from that. That's something that we've been talking about for over a year now, and we have to kind of look into that. We're talking about civilian oversight of the police. We've seen so many challenges lately in the police department that I think that's something the people of Burlington really want to see, and we've been talking a lot about that. And that goes back actually to, I think 2017, we had proposed a civilian oversight kind of issue, and it got shot down at that point. But
Yeah.
it's kind of an issue whose time has come, I think. We're also going to have a conversation on rent control and different types of rent control. And, there, even within our party, there's a large diversity of views on like what we can do to address the housing crisis in our city, because it is a housing crisis, but we have to kind of consider all of our options in that. And there's going to be a conversation around what we're going to do around that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things in particular Jane talked about, but I think also Zariah, I mean every candidate frankly, really talked about what we can be doing locally on climate. And so do you think that's going to be kind of on the forefront as well?
Absolutely. I think climate is something that we're going to look in every single issue. And you see that with the weatherization initiatives that have already been put forward that we're going to continue to push for. Public transit is another big climate initiative. If we can expand our public transit and get more people on the bus, that's a huge deal. Expanding bike infrastructure, and just in general, our transportation infrastructure in general across the city, and getting people. It's not about punishing people for driving cars. We never want to do that. We want to give people the opportunity to have different modes of transportation options. And that means expanding services to the new North End and the South End and all around, and making it more convenient for people to ride their bike and take the bus and get around by means other than their car. And that's a huge part of the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. One of the other aspects I think that was really interesting in terms of just the coalition that I think these campaigns and the party this time around put together, I think in a really historic fashion. We had, major labor unions throughout the state and in the city supporting our slate of progressive candidates. We had people like the Sunrise Movement endorsing many of our candidates, who's really the authors, if folks aren't familiar with the Sunrise Movement, they're really the authors of the Green New Deal, have really put in the work to get that conversation started in the public discourse nationally and locally and statewide, of course. And then you also had folks like DSA who have been doing amazing work on a number of issues. We really had a ton of different groups, Rights and Democracy. I mean, I could keep naming them, but there's just actually so many grassroots organizations who came together and said either the entire slate or almost all of the slate are people that we want to support and that we are going to put in work to help elect. So I wonder if you could kind of speak to first like how significant that is for the party, but more so kind of after that speak to what that means in terms of governance, right? Because it's not just we elect the right people and we can go home and sleep until the next election. It's we now have this huge amount of folks ready to do that work to pass some priorities.
Exactly, and it's hugely exciting. I think when people think about how Bernie was elected mayor back in 1991, a huge part of that was building a movement of tenants, of workers, especially labor unions, of everyone who was kind of at that time dissatisfied with the direction of that mayor, and putting together this big grassroots broad-based coalition. And that's exactly the same kind of thing we're doing now. We have people involved in the climate movement overwhelmingly supporting our candidates. We have the union movement, the AFL-CIO, which represents over 10,000 members across the state of Vermont, supporting our entire slate. We have the AFSCME city worker, which the AFSCME union that represents a significant portion of the city workers endorsing our entire slate, the Howard Center workers endorsing our entire slate, the Sunrise Movement endorsing many of our candidates, and the DSA and Rights and Democracy, who are really focused on issues of economic justice, endorsing many of our candidates. So I think bringing all those people together, it's not something you see very often, and when it happens, we're able to really make big victories happen for working people and the climate, and that's exactly what we saw on Tuesday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder if you could speak to as well, how significant it is to have a coalition made up of those groups, of folks throughout the community, of these council candidates, in terms of actually now looking at, okay, what do we do? We won big, and now there's a bunch of priorities that we could pass. How significant is it to have those groups kind of behind these candidates?
It's huge because, as we all know, the work does not stop after Election Day, and we have to continue to make a big, broad-based movement, and we need all these same groups to show up to City Council, because the fact is while we have a majority on the City Council, we don't have control of the mayor's seat, and while we're going to work with the mayor as much as we can. We also need to continue to put pressure to kind of pass some of these priorities and pass some of these initiatives. And I think the labor unions and the climate movement and Rights and Democracy and DSA play a massive role in that. And we're all going to work together very hard to kind of make sure our agenda moves this over the next year.
Yeah, no, it should be very exciting to watch.
Yes.
As a fellow political nerd. Well, yeah, I did want to turn and briefly, and we talked a little bit about this, but there was a ton of money spent. I mean, folks hiring full-time paid staff to work on these campaigns. There was a ton of money spent by the Democratic Party locally on direct mail. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars in some cases. I wonder, take it away from the Democrats and progressives, but what does this mean for, the idea that you can just fundraise from some of the largest landlords, some of the largest developers, from some of the largest corporate interests that are in our state and in Burlington, and still, frankly, lose by huge margins when there's a ton of money being spent?
Yeah, and we're going to crunch the numbers, and I think the final campaign finance report is not due until mid-March. So we're going to see kind of all the money that was spent in this local election. But I think it's really telling that all of that happened, and we still won big. And we didn't do it by spending any money. We spent no money on big direct mailers. It was good old-fashioned organizing, door knocking, going out talking to voters 2 or 3 times. We had a huge base of volunteers. These aren't people that were doing any work for free. We had no paid campaign managers or anything like that. These were people that were just doing it because they believe in the cause. And I think our message resonated to such a high degree that we were actually able to bring so many people out to support our candidates. And it's really an exciting thing. And I still believe that you can't buy elections in Burlington, and I think we proved that on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's certainly good news, and it's reassuring just as a young person who's been getting involved to see that actually talking to folks, listening to your neighbors about things that are impacting them on the day-to-day actually matters, and that raising huge amount of checks from wealthy folks is not how you win elections. It's definitely reassuring in the current political climate. Speaking of the Progressive Party and money spent, like you said, we didn't spend a lot of money, and we don't take any corporate money. So I guess 2 questions. Where can folks go to donate to the Progressive Party? Because we have, we have more monthly donors than the Democratic Party and the Republican parties combined in Vermont, which is crazy. But, most of our supporters and most of the folks in the Progressive Coalition are working class folks. So, people aren't dropping huge checks usually on the Progressive Party. Where can folks go to donate, though, even if it's a small amount or a small monthly donation? Yeah,
and just so people understand, our budget is like $60,000 to $75,000 per year. And you think about like what we were able to do with that small budget right here in Burlington. And, now we're talking about running a candidate for governor. We're talking about running a candidate for lieutenant governor. We're talking about all these different state rep and state senate seats that we're running candidates, and you look at how much money we actually have to make that happen. It's like I can't believe it. So then you imagine what we could possibly do if we had maybe twice that much money, and how much more we'd be able to support our candidates and get our message out across the state. So people can donate at progressiveparty.org/donate. There are various options. We have well over 100 donors that are funding our movement, giving $10 a month, $5 a month. Some people give as much as $50 or $100 a month if they can afford it. But the overwhelming majority of our money comes from small monthly donors. Giving those small contributions every month, and that is what allows us to continue to do this work. And we are heading into a general election where we expect to have many candidates from governor right on down to state representative, and in order to kind of fully support them, we're going to need to raise a bunch of money to do that. So I hope anyone here can, who's listening, can chip in.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was progressiveparty.org/donate. You think you can mail a check. There's information there. You can donate online. So please do consider becoming a small monthly donor. It does, like Josh said, make a huge difference. So that about wraps up the amount of time we have. But I did want to thank Channel 17 not only for allowing us to do this month over month, but also for really having some great coverage on election night. That's where I feel like we always go as progressives to kind of watch our news and see election results on town meeting day. So I did want to thank them for that work. It's probably been a busy week for them, and certainly appreciate them allowing us to do this show month after month. But as always, my name is Carter Neubieser. This has been Progressive Party TV, where we've just been talking about different issues, and right now we're obviously feeling pretty good about where the party's at and have a lot of work to do moving forward. So please do consider becoming a monthly donor. Thank you to Channel 17, and I hope everybody has a good rest of their night. Thank you.
Thanks, Carter. Thanks, everybody.